Hi, I'm William Spaniel. Let's learn about international relations. Today's topic is bribery on the Security Council. And the big question we're going to address in this lecture is how much is a seat on the Security Council worth? To segue into that, I want to talk about how most votes go down on the Security Council. As it turns out, most resolutions have unanimous support. And to wit, I looked at resolutions 1901 through 2000, which took place from December 2009 to the middle of 2011, and all but 9 of those 100 resolutions passed by a vote of 15 yeses to 0 nos to 0 absentations. So what we see here is that virtually all of those resolutions are passing with unanimous support. And that might strike you as strange. That certainly isn't what I would have expected before I had known this, and I doubt that you expected that either. And so you might be wondering why that's the case. Well, I'm going to offer you 3 different explanations and quickly get rid of 2 of these. So first is that states just love to get along and sing Kumbaya on the Security Council. If you're pessimistic like me, you're going to immediately cross that one off. And so straight off that, I'm just going to get rid of that. So let's ignore number 1. Number 2 is that resolutions only get brought up to vote if they're going to pass unanimously. But that's a little bit strange as well. If the United States expects, say, Pakistan to be the only one voting no on a particular resolution, well, Pakistan doesn't have veto power on the Security Council, so it's strange that the United States would just refuse to bring up a resolution if it's going to think that it's going to pass by a 14-1 vote versus a 15-0 vote. It seems like the United States would prefer getting the passed resolution 14-1 than having no resolution at all. And so we're going to focus on option number 3, which is something more nefarious is going on. And if you've been paying much attention to these lectures, you should know that I love nefarious explanations, and so it's not at all surprising that we're going to be going with number 3. And given the title of this lecture, it should be pretty clear that the nefarious explanation is bribery. And to that end, this is going to transition us to our interactive portion of this lecture. I'm going to ask you the following question. How much does U.S. foreign aid increase when a state serves a 2-year term on the Security Council? So what's my expected value of U.S. foreign aid the year before I'm on the Security Council? Think about that number. Think about how much more I'll be getting the next year when I am on the Security Council. And I want to know the percentage increase. And remember that in the Security Council, you have 10 non-permanent members, and those 10 non-permanent members serve 2-year terms. And so we're looking at those 10 guys. We're not looking at the permanent members of the Security Council. So think about that year-over-year increase that you'd expect to get by being on the Security Council. And once you have your answer, go ahead and put that into the comment section of the video. And I'm going to assume that you've done that. And now we can get to the answer. The answer is 59%. So by being on the Security Council, your expected U.S. foreign aid receipts are going to increase by 59%. And the primary theory behind this, of course, is bribery, right? So states don't really feel too strongly about most issues on the docket. So if I'm Pakistan, most of the things that are going through the Security Council, I don't really care too much about. I might not like them very much. And so if all other things being equal, I would be voting no on those resolutions. Well, if the United States really wants unanimity on the Security Council, then the United States should be willing to trade dollars for support. And so Pakistan is willing to say, hey, I love money. I don't really care much about this resolution. I'm going to go ahead and take that money and vote yes. Do what the United States wants because the United States is paying me off. So that's the basic theory. That's, I think, the most straightforward interpretation of what's going on. But as it turns out, it's not exactly clear that is the case. There are a bunch of potential objections. Remember that correlation doesn't imply causation. So just because we expect states on the Security Council to be getting more from the United States in foreign aid doesn't mean that it's actually caused by being on the Security Council or that bribery is actually doing the dirty work. And as it turns out, there's ongoing debate whether the United States is truly bribing members in the international relations literature. So I want to look at some of the counter arguments or counter theories. One is that this is a lighter version of bribery, where it's not the United States proactively giving money in exchange for votes, but rather the United States is expressing gratitude after the fact for states giving the proper vote. So that's still very similar to bribery, which is why I'm labeling this the Bribery-Lite Theory. And there is actually an even softer version of this, which is saying that the United States is learning about what's going on in these other countries. So voting gives some information to the United States about how much that other state, say Pakistan again, shares in common with the United States preferences. And so the United States is redistributing aid accordingly by seeing, hey, Pakistan's voting with us quite a bit. It must be the case that Pakistan likes us a lot, and so we're going to increase their aid because of that. So that's a lighter version of the bribery story, but there's even more nuanced version. It could be the case that what's really going on here is that the United States is paying what you'd think of as bribes as really just buying goodwill. And to support that, it's actually true that the United States rarely punishes for noncompliance. So if the bribery story does hold, then you would expect that if I give you a bribe and then you don't follow through on the bribe, then I'm going to sanction you for taking my money and then not following up on what I wanted you to do with it. And as it turns out, that's actually rarely the case, that you see the United States punishing states for noncompliance. And so that supports, or that lends credence to the idea that these bribes are actually just the United States buying goodwill and hoping to enjoy the support of those states by giving the bribe. Now, there are counterarguments that say none of this is actually true and we don't see any sort of bribery going on at all. It could be the case that you being on the Security Council makes your needs more salient, and thus aid is increasing benignly. So if I'm on the Security Council, I'm on a body where there's only 15 countries in total, and so people are going to be naturally paying more attention to me. If there's some sort of health crisis going on in my country, you're going to be more likely to notice that if I am on the Security Council versus when I'm not on the Security Council. And so it could be the case that you're seeing aid increasing because of awareness factors, not because of anything nefarious. It could be the case that something else is causing both things, right? So we saw this in the lecture on correlation not implying causation, where it could be the case that we're seeing two things happening together because a third thing is causing both of them. And that could be the case here, where me being more active in the international community makes it more likely for me to be elected to the Security Council, and that in turn increases my foreign aid. And again, nothing nefarious is actually going on there. But to wrap things up, there's an everything argument here as well. These theories aren't really mutually exclusive, so it could be the case that everything is going on to some degree. And if that's the case, then the bribery isn't as strong as that 59% figure initially made us perhaps believe, but we're still possibly seeing some sort of bribery. It's just not going to be that strong. And it's going to be hard to measure exactly how much that's going to be because of all of this noise. It's hard to see what's going on empirically by just looking at numbers when there are so many different counterarguments to the straightforward bribery story. Either way, bribery probably goes on to some degree at the United Nations Security Council, and that's something that you should keep in mind. Hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I will see you next time for one more lecture on the Security Council. Take care.